Hello there! It's Friday, which means it's time, once again, for the best movie podcast ever, the only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, and with me as always, his soul is mine! It's Anthony James!
Good afternoon, good evening, good night. I was not aware of that.
I didn't lean into that as much as I could have, listener. So just you thank your lucky stars that I didn't ham that up. That was me at about 50% that you got there. I could have gone higher.
Question: as a Mortal Kombat novice, I played a few of the games.
Yeah.
Was that a quote from the new one or the old one?
That was a quote from the old one, which has since been canonized in the later games. So that was a Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung quote from the opening of Paul W.S. Anderson's Tilt at the Mortal Kombat canon in 1995. More on that later. And he then came back in it was 2 years ago. They were like, you know what? He was really good as Shang Tsung. Maybe we should just put him in our video game. And he came back for Mortal Kombat 11, which I was all about.
I didn't know there was that many.
There are a lot of Mortal Kombat. There's a lot of Mortal Kombat movies as well, some of which we're going to be discussing in this week's Movie Diary. For those of you who haven't listened before, this is where we talk about all the movies we have seen since the last time we did one of these. And if you haven't picked up on the incredibly subtle cues, we've kind of stumbled, or I have kind of stumbled into a themed episode this week by basically watching video game movies.
Half a theme episode, definitely for you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's no secret that I'm a massive nerd. I've got Vegeta on my. You can't see it. Vegeta's on there. He's on there somewhere.
He's on there, yeah.
Before we do that, what do I need to say? Please subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Culture Cave on there, or on podcasting apps, if that is your preferred medium of consumption. We are the best movie podcast ever. And get involved in the comments. Let us know what you watched or what you thought of the movies that we're going to discuss. But other than that, I say it's about time to watch some gosh darn movies. Watch some gosh darn movies. Discuss some gosh darn movies.
Let's do it.
There we go. Great. Seamless.
I was trying to Darren Brown them to hit the like button.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, call to action, both visually and audio. Okay.
Just every now and then we'll just go like this.
So I think, how many did you say you've got? Yeah, that'd be great.
I've got 2. I didn't actually watch Iron Man 3.
Okay, so why don't... I think we should start on Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
And then we can do Sound of Metal, and then we can just maybe just end on your last one.
The documentary, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you introduced Sound of Metal.
Yeah? Okay.
I think it's the type of film you'll be better at introducing than me.
Okay, cool, right. Here we go. Movies about fatalities. We're here to talk about them. I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're going to talk about Mortal Kombat first because this is the part I was born to play. I watched 2 Mortal Kombat movies this week. Not 1. Count them, 2. I could have watched 3. I decided not to subject myself to Mortal Kombat Annihilation because that movie, even for someone like me, is a dumpster fire. So, Anthony, have you seen the original movie? The 95 one?
No.
Okay. So
as usual, no.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, there's going to be a recurring theme in both of these movies, and it'll soon become clear why. So, cast your mind back to the heady days of 1995. Spice Girls are running wild. England are preparing for a strong run at the Euros in Euro 96. Teddy Sheringham and Alan Shearer leading the line, and a young man named Paul W.S. Anderson has yet to ruin his name by attaching himself to the Resident Evil movie franchise. And he decides, you know what, Mortal Kombat is big news. It's in the arcades. People are ripping each other's spines out, and we want some of that action. And he decides to make a movie about it. Now, this movie is, by any metric, a bad movie, I will say. It is some of the worst casting, diabolically bad acting, and really a plot that is pretty paper thin, but gosh darn it, that it's got some heart, and I kind of love it. So it basically tells the story of a bunch of martial artists who get grouped together on an island by the outworld sorcerer Shang Tsung, who basically wants to win And like, there's a tournament between Outworld and the Earthrealm. If Outworld win 10 in a row, they get to like invade Earthrealm, and they've won 9 in a row, and this is the 10th one, and he's getting up to all kinds of japes and trickery to try and beat Earthrealm's warriors. That's essentially the plot.
First question. I'm going to need a lot of questions here.
Go on.
Is the storyline of the battle, is it like an actual tournament like in Dragon Ball Z where they have like the square to fight on? Or is it more of like a battle royale like in the film Battle Royale?
So sometimes is the answer to that. So there are several fights that are clearly organised. There are crowds, there are rings. The fighters have entrances and they fight each other with some semblance of rules. Other times, people just fight in the woods with no one around, and that's apparently an official fight in the competition.
It's like in wrestling, whenever like someone just slams someone into the wall backstage and goes, "Count this, ref! Count this!"
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes you get like the sort of Ken Shamrock, Steve Blackman unsanctioned match that happens backstage,
or the gold dust on a stretcher, unconscious.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that happens. That happens between Scorpion and Johnny Cage in this one. So. The first thing I have to mention about this, because I think it's the first thing anyone will think of when they think of the 95 Mortal Kombat movie, is the absolutely banging score that they created for this. So it's just techno at its absolute finest, no holds barred. It is completely cheesy. The movie opens, as all good movies should, with someone shouting the name of the movie. Just goes Mortal Kombat, and then goes into the da 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 da, and then like the title, I think it was Paramount who put this out. No, it wasn't Paramount. I can't remember who it was, but the production company logo comes up, and then the Mortal Kombat logo comes up, and it's on fire. It's a great opening. And in fact, actually, the first 10 minutes of this movie, where all the characters are introduced, is pretty damn good. Like, in terms of faithful character introductions, you get Johnny Cage turning up, played by Lyndon Ashby, and he just beats up a bunch of guys on a movie set. You get Liu Kang, whose brother's killed by Shang Tsung. He's like the kind of... I guess he's like your Ryu if you want your Street Fighter analog. He's like the kind of... The Asian main character, because that was the thing that all fighting games had at this point. You get Sonya Blade and Jax looking for the criminal Kano in some great nightclub where Sonya just decides to shoot some guy with a shotgun in the middle of a crowd, which doesn't seem like the kind of thing a cop would do, but I mean, she does.
This is a lot of characters being introduced. I've got a question for you again.
Go on.
So are these characters being introduced in like a really sort of one at a time sort of way, or how's it work? Because like my mind's going to like Suicide Squad, where it's like, hey, this is Boomerang Guy, this is Death Shot, this is all these people, and it literally has their name on the screen. And then like for some reason, 45 minutes later, there's a new character who just appears out of nowhere called Katana, and then she dies.
I mean, so, there is a character called Katana who is literally introduced in this movie about halfway through, funnily enough.
Oh my god, it's the same.
Yeah, it's the same movie. But, I mean, this movie has a lot of flaws. The thing that it does do very well is these introductions. And they're not as kind of... They don't have those kind of presentational elements. This was kind of before that kind of schlock made its way into mainstream cinema, but it's very much like, here's your Johnny Cage scene, here's your Sonya Blade scene, here's your Liu Kang scene, because those are your three main characters. And the thing that unifies these characters is Shang Tsung turning up in some way to manipulate them towards joining the tournament, and then with Liu Kang's scene, we also get the unforgettable Christopher Lambert, the Belgian man, as the Chinese thunder god Raiden. So this is a case of casting so bad that it goes full circle and just becomes amazing. Where like he is not trying to be, he's made the right decision. He's just going to be a white guy playing a Chinese thunder god, and with white hair. And he's like got his weird Christopher... I think it's actually Christopher Lambert is how you pronounce his name, but I've never actually heard it said out loud. But either way, his accent is terrible. He's hamming it up, and it's amazing.
What accent's he putting on?
He's basically just like, I don't think so.
He's just putting on a weird accent.
Yeah, he's got like a gravelly voice. He sounds less like the Highlander than you might expect.
Because he was the Highlander. In the Highlander, I'm assuming he has a really bad Scottish accent.
I can't remember what accent he tried in the Highlander. I definitely remember that
his name's Conor McLeod.
Yeah, I mean, he's supposed to be Scottish, and Sean Connery is in that movie, and he is playing a Spaniard. So it's That movie, Christopher
Like
Lambert
Anthony Hopkins playing Zorro.
Yeah, it's basically just this kind of roulette wheel of accents for actors who are not suited to them at all. But yeah, so this movie it has some heart. It really does. And there are certain bits about it that I do really love. So as I say, the introductions are great. They made the awful choice, as a lot of movies did in the kind of mid-90s, to employ CGI for the character Reptile, which has aged incredibly poorly. And it had
to be done though, Konrad. It was a stepping stone.
It did. And I think I remember at the time being like, oh, this looks okay. But when you compare it to the character Goro, who is a practical effect, it's literally a dude with like a harness on his back. 'Cause he's like this big, like 8 foot tall guy with 4 arms. It stands out. Although I will say Goro, because it's literally a dude with a harness, his upper body is literally 3 times the size of his tiny little human legs, which is very, very funny. The characterizations aren't all that faithful in this one. So you've got Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Sub-Zero's my boy. He's the guy who shoots ice, and Scorpion, who's like the undead ninja that he killed and is now back. And they're supposed to be like mortal enemies. In this, they're just like they dismiss that with a throwaway line. They're like, they're mortal enemies, but they're under Shang Tsung's power. They're just going to be bad guys who die. The fight scenes are very, very good for the most part. And I love the way the movie knows that its score is one of its strong points. So there'll be long stretches of like kind of silence or ambient a sound where, you know, plot is happening, and then suddenly a fight will happen, and the theme will just come back and like blast out of the speakers. It's like there's no thought to any kind of subtlety in the sound balance at all. It's like, here, this is what you're here for. You want the Mortal Kombat theme? There you go. Like, it's kind of on par with Space Jam's Quad City DJs theme, I would say.
Space Jam. See, the Mortal Kombat theme, right? Is this like is it bringing elements of like what I imagine is like the old 8-bit theme into it, or is it like a brand new theme for the film?
I think it's a completely new thing. I don't remember any of the music from this ever appearing in the games previously, and it's one of those. It's a score that is so, or I don't want to call it a score because it's kind of individual tracks, but it's music that was so impactful that it became like the de facto music of Mortal Kombat, despite never appearing in a game, which is a sign of how good it was. Okay. But yeah, I mean, this movie, if you've seen it, you are probably a fan. And if you are not a fan, you've seen it, you probably didn't like it. And you're right to do so, because it's a terrible movie. The script is so hokey that it's actually quite adorable in this. So that there's a moment, this character Kitana, who is introduced as like some outworld princess, telling Liu Kang to use the element which brings life to defeat Sub-Zero, who's the ice ninja, rather than just saying water, as if solving that riddle benefits him in any way. And then later in the movie, the character of Sonya Blade, in slow motion, screams like "No!" as a character who she has literally never spoken to in the entire film is killed by Goro. Like the movie does not have time for things like that, and I kind of respect it, but it's not. I love this movie. I can't in good conscience say it's a good movie, unfortunately.
Well, Sonya Blade, funnily enough, I thought I recognized the actress's name.
Yeah, you know.
And she is the love interest in Billy Madison.
Yes, she is. Sampras's wife, Bridget Nielsen Sampras.
And all I remember is that if Billy Madison, Adam Sandler, got a question right, she would remove a piece of clothing. That's what I remember.
I remember her singing a song where she asked the question, "Haven't I got a nice rack?" And that was a pretty formative moment for me in my teenage years, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, Pete Sampras liked it, so he got there in the end.
Old Pistol Pete.
Yeah, old Pistol Pete. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, Konrad. You've not sold that film to me.
It's the kind of movie that I would make you watch, and I think you would probably enjoy this if you watched it with me, because I'd be like, "Oh, check this shit out." But I feel like
no. This 100%. This speaks as a film which I know. Before it's all said and done, you will have sat me down to watch this film. I know that for a fact.
But like, I've seen a lot of critics for this movie and the next movie I'm going to discuss who clearly aren't fans of the source material, who are like, "This is garbage," and they are absolutely right. And
but also wrong.
Yeah, but they are wrong. They are objectively wrong. That movie is great, and likewise, I'm going to put my credibility on the line here, because this next movie, I said not how many episodes ago was it? It was like 2 episodes ago that I kind of disliked the way The Rock was like when the Baywatch movie reboot came out. He was like, critics hate it, but the fans love it. And I was like, shut up, Rock. That's like a really bad take. Like, you should trust people who have, you know.
Oh no, I hear the backtrack.
But here I am. Yeah, boop, boop, boop. I'm backing it up. A lot of critics seem to hate Mortal Kombat 2021. I believe it had like a 50% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes when last I checked it. And again, qualitatively, there are a lot of problems with this movie, but God help me, I left the movie thinking that was pretty good. So basically, I mean, it tells a different story in theory. This one, the setup is basically the same. Outworld have to win a 10th tournament to conquer Earthrealm, and it's the same kind of setup. The difference here is that we get Lewis Tan is our protagonist. He's not a member of the Mortal Kombat cast, and I kind of understand why they've chosen like a generic protagonist, because it's almost like an audience analog through which we see the cool characters doing their stuff. So he plays a descendant of Hiroyuki Sanada's Scorpion. The opening scene is Hiroyuki Sanada, who is great casting for Scorpion in this, fighting.
He looks a little bit like Lewis Tan. Looks a little bit like an Asian Matthew Fox, who is Jack from Lost.
Yeah, he does have that kind of like lantern-jawed kind of appearance. But yeah, so the film opens with this great fight scene between Hiroyuki Sanada and Joe Taslim as Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Fantastic casting for both of them, and it's a really, really strong opening. And Lewis Tan is basically the descendant of Scorpion, or Hanzo Hasashi as he was before he died. And it is revealed that there's a bunch of fighters around the world who have this tattoo, this mark that basically notes them as someone who will awaken powers within themselves that lets them throw fireballs and do shit like that. And they're the ones who will compete in the tournament. And Shang Tsung and Sub-Zero are sending assassins around Earthrealm, basically killing people with this mark so that there's no one left to fight in the tournament. And this is how Lewis Tan's character, whose name is Cole something, it's completely
Cole
generic,
Young.
and yeah, that's right. Like he's generic man. There's no character to him whatsoever. But that's how he ends up kind of running into cool characters, which is, you know, Sonya Blade, Jax, Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and Raiden.
And of course, Allison.
Allison, did you say?
There's a character called Allison, yeah. Amongst all these amazing names.
I'm trying to remember who that is. It might be his daughter. He has a family angle that is just like dropped for the entire movie and then comes back right at the end. It's really bad. And there are a lot of things about this movie that I absolutely agree with critics about that are awful. So first, like number one with the bullet, the sound balance is shocking. I know, like, you're a big fan of Christopher Nolan, but I feel like this is his fault.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
There are moments in this film where the music is blaring over people speaking to the point where you can't hear them speaking. You can't hear what they're saying. And it's like, who mixed this? And Christopher Nolan, I know he kind of started it with Dark Knight Returns, or Dark Knight Rises rather, with Bane's dialogue, and it's been a feature of his films. I think it's deliberate since then, but it's really.
I think it's because he's trying this thing where he's like, you know, it's an experience, man. Like, the dialogue isn't the most important thing; it's the whole experience. It's a bit like, it's like whenever bands mix the vocal really low in the track. And I'm like, I get you trying to do a different thing, but I just want to hear what they're saying. Yeah,
it just makes it hard to follow, I find, and this really suffers from that as well. Fortunately, there ain't no plot to follow, so you don't have to worry about it. If I was going to characterize this movie, I'd say the opening 15 minutes is really strong. The middle, fully 45 minutes to 50 minutes is fucking garbage, and then the end is amazing. So the problem, the sound mixing, even though it's the most obvious problem, the real problem is that the movie gets lost in trying to justify this extended training sequence where they're trying to wake up the magical spirit in Kano, and Cole Young and all these other characters with marks. and it's nonsense. It doesn't need to justify itself. It's like, just let them throw fireballs. I don't care. You don't need. I'm here to see characters with metal arms punching guys' heads open. Like, you don't need to explain to me how they get the metal arms. It's fine.
Well, actually, that's the only thing I know about this film is that there's been some memes online about, like, you know, it took a long time to get to the tournament.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there barely is a tournament. Like, the tournament is kind of like an afterthought. It's that last half hour, essentially. It spends way too long getting to it. But God help me, when it gets to it, it is great. There's a moment, and I'm not going to say who, but there's a moment in this movie where someone cuts someone else in half very, very graphically. And that was the moment where I sort of like, I was, you know, I was my dad reading the newspaper. That was the moment where the newspaper drops, and I was like, hello, like, hello, we got ourselves a movie. Like, it was that was the moment where I went from being like, oh, this is going to be trash, to suddenly being like, okay, show me what you got. And from that point onwards, it is just dumb fights with people crushing people's heads and lasering eyes out and turning blood into knives and stabbing people in the neck with it and disemboweling people. And I was very, very much on board with that.
Okay.
And I think the movie, I wasn't a big... One thing I will say for those fights is, and I think this was a budgetary concern, I wasn't a big fan of 3 of the big fights happening in regular-ass suburban homes and areas. Particularly when you look at kind of the production design of the first movie, where it's very much inspired by, like, Enter the Dragon. So it's, you know, these kind of misty islands and, like, really like fantastic settings. And this doesn't have that at all. And I'm sure it's a budgetary thing, because there's no way it was made. There's no way they made that decision willingly. But it does kind of detract from. Like, you've got this guy who can summon knives on his arms fighting an 8-foot tall dude with 4 arms in, like, a shed in Arizona. And it's like, could you not get a better setting for this guy? It's like, just anything would have done, really. But the fights are great. The creators absolutely know that the audience are here for, like, the audience like myself are here for Scorpion versus Sub-Zero. Those are easily the 2 most popular characters in the franchise, and that's the big payoff fight. And it absolutely delivers. But it's I 100% see why anyone who doesn't know the material and doesn't care for the material would think this was garbage, because from a traditional storytelling perspective, that middle chapter is so bad, but it won me back round. All it takes is someone being cut in half, is what I've learned.
Well, that sounds good to me. So basically, what run you back round to a film of 2 halves is a man getting cut in half.
Exactly. Yeah,
and you know,
it
shows the head.
Yeah. I mean, it shows everything. To quote Patrick Stewart, like, you see the whole shebang gets cut in half, and I was very much there for it. And then another person has their head crushed, and I was like, all right, movie. Like,
to be honest with you, you might have got me into this.
Yeah,
now.
you're playing. You're kind of playing to the gallery here, because I could feel, you know, all of the other Mortal Kombat fanboys being like, yeah. Fine, you've swung this back around. I do hope, though. I hope they make another one of these, because I think it has made quite a lot of money so far, and I suspect it will continue to do so, because there aren't any other films out at the moment. I'm
really interested how much money films are making at the minute.
Yeah.
Making, like, the idea of a film making their money back in this climate seems ridiculously hard to do.
Yeah, well, and I think of my understanding is that it's like it was before, only more so. So Godzilla vs. Kong has been, like, at the top of the box office charts for weeks now, because that's like the only thing that's out. I'm just checking it now. So it's done 50 million worldwide, which is not that good, actually. So that's its first week, or first weekend, actually, because we're recording this on a Monday. So
it would have done more than that if cinemas were open.
Yeah, so 50 million worldwide is not bad, actually, for it's a movie released during a pandemic, for particularly a bad movie being released during a pandemic. But I do hope that there is promise here. I hope they make enough money to make another one, and I hope the first thing they do is drop Louis Tan's character, not because he's bad, but he's just very generic and no one cares. He's not part of the Mortal Kombat crew, and I don't want to see him when I could see Johnny Cage.
That's really interesting, like the idea that it drags so much in the middle there. Do you think that this film, like in 20 years' time, is going to be remembered like the first Mortal Kombat, or do you think it's trying to capture lightning in a bottle again?
I think the first one is remembered so fondly now because it's so cheesy, and you've got like it is kind of like that lightning in a bottle of the amazing techno theme, the incredibly hammy performances of like Lyndon Ashby as Johnny Cage and Christopher Lambert and Kari Tagawa. I always forget how the Hiroyuki Tagawa rather. This I don't think has the cheese or the kind of humor of that first movie, but that last half hour is really, really good. So I could see people I could see someone making a supercut of just being like, just ignore that you get the Sub-Zero Scorpion fight at the beginning, cut out the entire middle, go straight to the Mortal Kombat, what is effectively a tournament. Just have that. Don't worry about the middle. It doesn't matter, and that will be remembered very fondly. And I think, I like if I try and put my kind of like critic hat on, I think this is qualitatively at least the equal of the original movie. But but I mean, your mileage will vary depending on how much you like that original movie.
That's interesting to me. I think there's always those films which are kind of a bit naff and a bit over the top and a bit silly, like the original Mortal Kombat seems to be. I always find that remakes of those type of films kind of miss the essence of what made them likable.
Yeah.
Is this an example of that? Like, are they trying to make like a more serious, gritty version of Mortal Kombat here, or are they leaning into the silliness?
Well, yeah, they're definitely not leaning into the silliness of so the first movie is like PG-13. There's no gore in it at all, really. It's cheese without the schlock. I think this they understand the inherent ridiculousness of the like super violence of Mortal Kombat, and I feel like this is a product of where the games have gone. So the games have famously really like the fatalities. So what you do at the end of each match, where it shouts finish him, and then you can do something horrible to someone. That used to be stuff like ripping someone's head off, and now if you look at those old fatalities, it's like, oh, that's cute. Because like in the new games, it's like if you walked in and saw them, you'd be like, this is going to turn someone into a serial killer. Like, it's people's eyes are flying out of their heads and stuff. Like, they're so ridiculous. They're like an Itchy and Scratchy cartoon now. And I feel like the violence in this is a direct reflection of that. But it definitely has lost a lot of the humour and the charm. And I think that middle chapter is a perfect encapsulation of the mistakes they made in trying to tell like a human story in the middle of this, and it's a really kind of fundamental misunderstanding of their own fan base as well, because I can't imagine any Mortal Kombat fans care about Cole's story. Like, he's not a Mortal Kombat character. Even if he were a Mortal Kombat character, his story and the story of his family isn't particularly well told. The whole Marks thing isn't Mortal Kombat lore, so it's just a really clumsy way of getting to a conclusion that's really simple. When you look at the first movie, it's like, these guys are good at fighting, get them on an island, they can fight.
Yeah,
that's the setup. You don't need to do any more than that. So the fact they spend so long just faffing around with this training sequence is kind of baffling. And the last thing I will say about it, actually, and this has been a very divisive character, but what is the actor's name? Josh Lawson plays Kano, who's like this kind of criminal who happens to be working with the good guys. He was a standout for me. I think he carried that middle chapter because he's the only character who's funny. He's like the sort of comic relief. I've seen a lot of people say they found him really annoying. So if you go to watch this movie, know that if you find him annoying when you first meet him, you are not going to enjoy the middle of that movie, because he doesn't change, and he is basically called upon to do all of the work in terms of salvaging it. But yeah, all that said, I still really enjoyed it. I've been openly critical of people who were I think we talked about Bohemian Rhapsody, and how people, if the last 10 minutes of a movie are good, it can trick them into thinking they enjoyed the movie, and that is 100% what's happened to me here. But you know what, they did it, so good on them, I guess.
Yeah, like that's just the way it goes. Well, yeah, okay. Well, I'm probably not going to watch them anytime soon, but you've definitely opened the door for me to get to check them out eventually.
Just like nudged it open.
Yeah. Hey, Konrad. We both watched the same movie this week.
I know, it's unprecedented. We've gone and done it, folks. The original Well, I don't want to say this is like the original premise, but I feel like this was one of the ideas behind this, was that we'd like kind of watch the same movies and then have a live discussion, if you like.
Well, it was never meant to be that we watched all the same movies, but I think we were always going to try and have an anchor point. And I think maybe this will be the start of that. I like the idea of having an anchor point. We've done it sometimes, because sometimes we talk about films we've both seen. But this week we actually both... we really wanted to see this film. So the way I'm glad we did this, because the way I kind of feel is a new film that comes out, I get to watch so few films just because of life, that whenever you watch a new film, in my mind, I'm like, right, okay, I can't watch that now because I can't just talk about it again on the podcast.
Exactly. You can't bring it up again.
Yeah, but I don't have time to watch, it and 3 more or whatever. So I think in the future, if we just say, all right, well, this is a new film coming out, we'll both watch this, it means I'll actually get to watch new films.
Yeah,
you know
well,
what I mean?
I think this is going to be a sign of things going forward. Is that we'll try to watch the new films. Not together, but we'll try to both get a watch in of a new film when there's a new film out we want to see, and give you guys some kind of relatively live discussion about it. So I'm calling this a new release because my standard is that when it comes out in the UK, when it gets a theatrical release somewhere that I can watch it, that's its release date. So this is 2021, and the Oscars can suck my dick. The Sound of Metal, directed by Darius Marder and starring Riz Ahmed and Olivia Cook and Paul. I don't know how to pronounce his surname. Rassi or Rassi?
I'm not sure.
But I mean, you've said that you've been looking forward to watching this. I've had an eye on this one for a while. It was getting a lot of buzz. So I think it actually released in America. I want to say or October or September time last year.
Okay.
Was getting a lot of buzz back then. But for those of you who don't know, it essentially tells the story of a drummer in a metal band. I didn't catch the name of the band, which is normally something I look out for.
I did catch it.
It's Black something, and I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember.
But it's normally I'm on the lookout for that because I like a good fictional band name. But he's a drummer in a band. He suddenly loses his hearing, and it's
Blackgammon.
Blackgammon. That's it. I don't know how I feel about that. Actually, I'm not sure because gammon is a type of meat. I know it's a card game, obviously as well, but I feel like they thought blackjack. No, that's too generic. Blackgammon.
I think if you call something like black steak, it's kind of having undertones that maybe you don't want.
Yeah.
A color and then a steak. If it's also a color that's sort of used to describe a race of people, it's a bit strange.
Well, I think maybe black sausage was taken. Well, that's I'm just cutting this conversation out off at the knees. I can't. We're going to dig ourselves a hole here, or I'm going to dig myself a hole. So I mean, it's essentially he suffers from hearing problems. This being Ruben, who is played by Riz Ahmed, and it's him trying to find a way back to normal life, or at least that's kind of on the surface what the movie's about. Realistically, what the movie is about is him exploring the many demons that he has, the many flaws in his character he has through the people he meets and the experiences that he goes through. And I'm going to say this right now. I don't want to lead you down a path with this, but I really liked this movie. I thought it was great.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you there.
Did you not enjoy it?
I thought it was fantastic.
Okay, good. He
absolutely,
got me, folks. He absolutely got me.
Fantastic. This is the exact sort of film that is right up my alley.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I like all sorts of films, really. But when I want to watch a really good film, I sort of go for a Paul Thomas Anderson style character study.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what I feel. I think this is what it's kind of doing. It's definitely a character study of this of Riz Ahmed. It's not the only character that has growth. Like Lou, played by Olivia Cook, also has growth.
Yeah.
But the journey you go on with him, and there's something I really like it. The characters he meets along the way, the sort of humanity that comes into him through working with the kids and learning sign language, and I really enjoyed it, and I love the fact that me, as someone who's never really thought too much in my life about what it would be like to be deaf. I like that there was also an aspect of just as a byproduct of what the film's about, there was an aspect of raising awareness of the deaf community.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I actually went and read a bit about the deaf actors who appeared in this movie, and I think particular shout out to an actor who isn't deaf, but Paul Raci. I apologize for not pronouncing his name correctly. So he essentially plays a character who runs a school, kind of a school for the deaf. It's kind of like almost like a retreat for the deaf. It like teaches young children how to live with an impairment, or teaches them that it isn't an impairment. In fact, is his philosophy.
I think it's also as well implied that a lot of the people who go to him are addicts of some sort.
Yeah, I think
that through becoming deaf they might relapse, so that he helps them through that like sort of traumatic moment in their life.
Yeah, so he himself is like a veteran who lost his hearing in a military injury, and was became an alcoholic. But Paul Raci himself is a veteran, and he's a musician with deaf parents. So on top of him being a great actor who turns in a phenomenal performance here, what a pull he is for this role. And it's slightly frustrating that it's taken him 40 years to get a platform to showcase his talents, because I thought, talking about character actors who get to shine in this movie, I think he's so soft-spoken and gentle in this. He just perfectly encapsulates what you imagine someone with the empathy and patience required to perform this kind of role would be like. I was blown away by him.
And the culminating scene of Riz Ahmed's storyline in that environment.
Yeah.
With Paul Raci at the table. We'll not go into the details in case we don't want to spoil things, but the culminating scene of that relationship is so well performed by both sides. Yeah. Paul Raci in particular, the real true heartbreak in him that is he feels like Riz Ahmed does something that he doesn't want him to do, basically.
Yeah.
And Riz Ahmed can no longer be with him and with the people, because he doesn't want the people to realize, to know what Riz Ahmed chose to do, in case it hinders their progress. Yeah. And I just thought that was perfect. I got exactly what he was putting across. And as you said, in that moment, I'm just like, where has this guy been? Like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I think that moment you're talking about there is made all the more impactful by what has led up to that, where, there's this period where Ruben comes to feel at home in this deaf community. He's looking after kids, he's learning to sign, he's fitting into these group sessions, and there's a probably 15-20 minute stretch there where that's going on, and I just had the biggest grin on my face while that was going on. It was so heartwarming, and it makes what comes after it so much sadder, without getting too much into it. I also think as well, something I really wanted to mention, because obviously the Oscars were this weekend, and I didn't want to get too much into it, but we were talking briefly before about how it won best before we recorded, about how it won best editing. But I also
Mikkel Nielsen.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Mikkel Nielsen. Those of you who listen to the After Dark podcast,
those who know.
Yeah, exactly. But I think something I really wanted to drill down on here was that it won the Oscar for best sound as well.
The sound,
and the kind of the use of that kind of like dull throbbing background noise to really encapsulate Ruben's isolation is brilliant. And the absolute bravery of the sound team to just allow scenes to be quiet as well. So something
that's what I was gonna say. Like the sound design was so brilliant, but it's actually really clever. What they did is that sometimes when you really noticed the sound design and how good it was, there was literally silence. And what I loved about it was whenever he was first losing his hearing, the first time we meet him, it's a real sort of strange two worlds butting up against each other, because he's this rock star who's like going on a tour. He's also an addict. But when you see them screaming and singing their music, and he's playing the drums, and then it cuts to the morning, and he like gets up and he makes a wonderful breakfast,
making smoothies,
and he's making smoothies, making coffee, and everything, and doing exercise, and everything's really tranquil, and the sounds are so rich and full, like the coffee hitting the pot, the smoothie being made. It isn't until 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, when you experience the same routine but with no hearing because he's losing his hearing, that you actually, in retrospect, you think, oh my god, the sound design was so amazing that now it's gone. I can really tell it's gone.
And I think often the best sound. I don't want to absolutely nail the Oscars, because they are like there's problems with a lot of those categories, but I feel like particularly the best sound category, often best sound seems to actually mean most sound. So if you look at the last 5 winners of the best sound category, 3 of them are war movies. It's 1917, Dunkirk, and Hacksaw Ridge. One is a Queen biopic, and the other one is Mad Max. So it's
The Quiet Place. The Quiet Place didn't win for sound.
No.
Interesting.
So, and I don't disparage those movies. There's some good movies in there, but it's refreshing to see a movie where restraint is recognised as a creative choice, kind of worthy of respect, and particularly because it makes the noisy moments in this film, as you say, both the ones that are designed to be kind of rich and beautiful early on, and later in the movie, the ones that are designed to be unpleasant and jarring, all the more impactful. And there is also kind of a delicious irony to the fact that it took a movie literally about deafness to get the Academy to move away from awarding movies with the loudest explosions in that category.
Yeah, and it's also interesting to me that like A Quiet Place also had a character who was deaf. And what's interesting to me is that they actually... I'd love to see more films. Now, don't get me wrong. I love the message that this put out. I love being in the world and being made more aware of that world of the deaf community. Having said that, I would love this now style of sound editing to move and go into films which necessarily aren't about the deaf community, and just have that be a new artistic style which could be pursued a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a real value to silence or quiet in movies, and it's not employed particularly in this is a drama, it's not an action movie, obviously a lot harder to employ it in an action movie, but to just have it recognized, I think, is really important as well. It's like you say, it's so striking in this, the way it moves from these moments of very rich soundscape to nothing, to this kind of dull throbbing background noise, and then to kind of tinny horrible noise later in the movie. And yeah, I really hope that we can see more movies like this recognized, not because loud explosions are bad, like they're great. I think Mad Max Fury Road had amazing sound design, but I think it's quite telling that and in fact, actually, if you go back even further, the movie that was awarded it before Mad Max was Whiplash, which is about a drummer as well, and it's very musical based. So if you want to win the best sound Oscar, make a movie with either really loud explosions or a drummer in it, is what we've learned from Sound of Metal and Whiplash.
There was a couple of things I wanted to mention about it. The first thing is the title of the film, Sound of Metal. It's obviously speaking of like what can happen if you don't protect your hearing with this style of music, in a way, like it's the sound of the metal music.
Yeah.
But also, like, there was a scene in a playground where he connected with a young boy at the school, where they were sort of communicating through the taps of a metal slide, and it sort of highlights the vibrations that they feel and sort of can understand them. And I thought that was really, really well done. And it made, it's one of those moments, maybe took me out of it a little bit, but I was like, the sound of metal, that's it,
No, I love that. That was, I mean, that's like at the beginning of that uplifting section where he kind of finds his place within the community. And I kind of knew it wasn't going to happen because it didn't feel like it was going in that direction as a movie. But when that started happening, I was hoping for a Step Brothers style rock the shit out of that drum kit moment, where he was going to just be like, you know what, I'm just going to bring my drums in here and blow these guys away, and I'm sure I can still play the drums in front of this deaf community. It would have been cheesy and hokey as hell if it had done that, but I wanted that for the character, which speaks to Riz Ahmed's performance, I think. We've already mentioned it briefly, but he has this kind of defensive, like, petulance and kind of impulsive quality to him, but Riz Ahmed also captures like such vulnerability in his performance as well, that you kind of can't help but like him. And there's a great moment, I don't know if you remember this particular scene, but it really, for some reason, it really stuck out to me, where Paul Raci's character says you have to go and write, just to start articulating your thoughts, and Ruben sits down and there's like a bagel on the desk with a coffee and a pad of paper, and it's this great, like, I don't know why it got me so much, but it's this great kind of duality of his character where he like hammers down on the bagel and like destroys it, and then like kind of carefully reconstructs it again, and then hammers down on it again, and then carefully reconstructs it again, and it's just this brilliant like dichotomy of his character where he is both sensitive and vulnerable, and also just this kind of vessel over brimming with rage and anger about his situation, and it's just it's such a strong performance from him.
Yeah, I love as well in that scene where he starts smacking the door and smacking the table, and it's like he knows no one can hear him, you know.
Yeah.
So he's sort of just
I hadn't thought
letting
about that,
his
actually.
anger
That's a
out.
really good point. Yeah, no one can hear him, so he can just do whatever he wants.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I got from it. Right, I got a question for you about this film that I'm interested to know what your take on this is. I've been now. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but there is a conversation to be had about the end of the film. I did love the end of the film, just so you know, before I ask the question. But I've been very aware in recent times of the hero's journey, and the end of the hero's journey. You return to a place of familiar, like the place of where you were.
Yeah.
But you've learned something new with your new skills or new knowledge. This film, I want to ask you: is this a tragedy? Because Riz Ahmed, I would say, when he gets to the end of this story, he is nowhere near returning to his place of familiarity, a familiar place.
Yeah, I think
Familiarity.
that is a really difficult question, but I think that's one of the things I loved most about this film is the way it doesn't spoon feed you how to feel in certain scenes. So to answer that question, I suppose I will refer back briefly to the first moment where Ruben loses hearing. I felt like really captures that kind of gamut of emotions you run when you first discover something is wrong with you. So you kind of trying to like, and it's all in his expressions. So like you're trying to rationalize it away, then kind of hoping it'll fix itself, and then gradually you kind of see the fear set in, and that's all delivered. That's all kind of presented to you because it's a setup. Whereas the end of the movie, it's much more ambiguous. I think to me, I read it as an acceptance that something new was going to happen, which is about as positive an ending as I think you could read from this. But there's definitely tragedy in that. There is. I don't think there's any way of arguing that what he is forced to give up isn't tragic in and of itself, even if it means that he will grow to become something new. And long-time listeners of all of our podcasts will know I am an optimist when it comes to these kinds of things. So perhaps that's my positive nature informing my decision there.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I'm interested to hear that. I think probably I would agree with most of the things you just said. I think that just it was a real sort of curveball for me that this was the first film I've watched in probably 6 months which didn't have that typical hero's journey ending.
Yeah.
And I liked it for that. I loved it for that. I love a different take, and obviously it's not the only film ever to do that. But that's what sort of made me question whether it was a tragedy.
Yeah.
It is a tragedy in ways, but there is also, as you say, a little bit of glimmer of hope in a certain way at the end as well. He sort of, without giving anything away, at the end he doesn't really have a community.
No,
the thing is, I don't really.
He's made some mistakes.
But I don't really know if he had a community. He had a community in his relationship with Lou, but I don't know if he had a community in general apart from that. So maybe there's some similarities in the end and start there.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I feel like that's one of the things I really liked about it was it doesn't fit itself into neat little narrative boxes. So he has. He's clearly the movie is obviously presenting his time spent with the deaf community very positively, and it worked on me. It's very heartwarming, but he never fully accepted that without getting into too much in terms of spoilers, he never fully accepts that he's deaf. He doesn't want to think of himself as deaf because he doesn't want to give up music, even though he kind of demonstrates that you don't need to be able to hear to play music, certainly not to play the drums, or in fact any music. Fucking tell that to Mozart. But Yeah, it's a complex movie in terms of what its characters experience and how they behave. Really anchored by some really strong performances. And actually, funnily enough, talking about the performances, I've always got an eye out for when actors play musical instruments to see if it's actually them doing it. And although a lot of Riz Ahmed's stuff is shot from behind, it was actually him doing it. So fair dues to Riz Ahmed.
Well, I don't know if he already did play the drums, but if and I don't know if he already knew sign language. But this is a film which, even like without even the actual how great the film is, an actor signing up to it might be like, "Whoa, I'm going to learn two skills in this."
I'm going to come out of this up in my life skills.
Like, if I was an actor, I would honestly be going into films thinking, "Am I going to get a skill out of this role?"
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good trade off for lower wages, hopefully. But yeah, he's amazing in this. There's some great performances, and I agree with you. I can't recommend this enough. It was a stunning film.
Yeah, loved it. Okay, so we got one more, and I'm not going to spend too long on this. It's sort of like an update on a film that came out in 2013.
Ooh.
But it's sort of an unofficial sequel in a way. It very much felt like that anyway.
Okay.
Did you see the documentary Blackfish?
I did. I saw it several times. Once with you, actually, I believe.
Yeah. I can't remember if that was the first time we watched it or not, but yeah. So it actually came out in 2013, and I think we met in 2013. So that was right around, during at the very beginnings of our courtship. That was Blackfish was the big the big one. So this is actually a film that came out in 2019, but I hadn't seen, I'm sure long-time listeners know, orcas are my favorite animal. I absolutely love orcas. I think that's not really a hipster position to take anymore. I think it's just like...
They're cool fish. Or mammals, I guess.
They're mammals, yes. Yeah. Everyone loves killer whales these days. They are genuinely my favorite animal of all time. Probably Free Willy had something to do with that. But this film is called Long Gone Wild. And if you liked Blackfish, it's maybe worth watching this as a little bit of an update on what's been happening since Blackfish came out. Okay. And they very explicitly mention within the film, like, this is since Blackfish came out, they talk about Blackfish as being a big phenomena in the animal rights activism sort of world. And it builds upon that and has some of the same trainers and like experts and things from Blackfish are in this as well.
Yeah.
It's in terms of the actual artistry of documentary making, it's nowhere near as good as Blackfish.
Okay. Is it the same documentarian who made Blackfish, or is it just kind of like continuing the
it's
work?
It's continuing the work. There was also another one that came out about the whale Keiku, who is the whale from the film's Free Willy.
Okay.
Because he actually got released.
Was that
into
not
the
Shamu
wild.
we've probably had this discussion before, but I always thought it was Shamu in Free Willy.
So Shamu, I've actually found out from watching Long Gone Wild. The original, this is really interesting. The first ever captured killer whale was captured and called, I can't remember, it was like Hanu or Manu or something like that.
Yeah.
Can't remember exactly. I think it was Namu or something. Yeah, Namu. I think it was Namu. Basically, then, whenever a female was captured, SeaWorld took the female and it was called, and they changed its name. They called it Shamu. Because, or maybe SeaWorld didn't even take it, but it was called Shamu because it was like a mixture of the Hanu and a she, right?
Oh, okay,
Shamu, that's where it came from. Hamu, whatever. Hamu, Shamu, whatever. But from then, every whale, or every killer whale orca, that SeaWorld has is known as a stage name, Shamu. So, so Tilikum, who was the one focused on in Blackfish, which killed Dawn, one of the traders, he would have been known as Shamu when doing the show. I think they're all just called Shamu.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, but his real name was Tilikum. So Keiku, I'm not sure.
I like the idea of it. Yeah. Like, that's his choice.
No, his real name is...
Yeah.
But what do you call it? So Keiku, I don't think ever was a SeaWorld animal. I think it was a different... aquarium or whatever animal.
Yeah.
But he was actually, there's a film all about him. But Long Gone Wild, I'm going to be honest with you, in terms of a documentary, I enjoyed it because I love orcas and I really love Blackfish, and as a follow-up it worked. But it really felt like someone just giving a PowerPoint on what's happened in the like orca activism world. It just felt like that. 2013, this happened. You know,
So it's
like.
not kind of like revealing the dark secrets of SeaWorld any further. Then it's just kind of.
Not really. It does. It actually is a little bit. It is a little bit like it goes into that SeaWorld have sort of tried to change their tact. They've come out and like tried to market themselves as good guys and saying that they're going to stop their breeding programs and they're going to let their whales live out in the parks, and they're sort of getting rid of them by that. You know, once they die, they're gone. But they also did push through, so traders aren't allowed to go into the tank with them now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to market themselves as much more environmentally friendly. So on the big screens at the Shamu stadiums now, they have wild orcas swimming on the big screens, and all around the tank is like big, like, you know, makes it look like the wild Washington State coast, and it's got like the big trees and all. It's making it look like very naturalistic.
Right.
And the whales will come out. Yeah, so the orca will come out and do a flip, and then
just like they do in the wild.
Yeah, and go back behind. It's the exact same thing. It's just the whales are being told to do it by the trainer behind the scenes. The whale goes out, does it, and then goes back and gets the fish behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So there's no change whatsoever. So there's a big push. I will say as well that they were talking about the fact that some of the whales, when they're like at backstage, will just be spy hopping out of the water to watch the screen. Can you think how taught, like, these animals have been shown, they have all the same brain parts as us. Certain parts of their brain are bigger than our parts of our brain. So by all intents and purposes, they have bigger brains and more functional brains than us. And you're showing them videos of wild orca.
Yeah. It's like showing, I guess they probably do this in prison, but it's like showing prison inmates, like, I don't know, movies about people going, like, ranging out in the great forests of America or something.
Yeah,
so.
That's just like having that on all the time, and then making them go out and do like little dances for the public.
Yeah,
but that is what it is. Like, there's a couple of actual real life. Like they go along with the activist who made the film The Cove about the dolphins who get killed in a particular cove in Asia. They went along with him because this is we'll end on this because I'm not going to talk all day about it. If you're interested in orcas, go and watch it. Long Gone Wild. It's on Amazon Prime in the UK anyway.
Yeah.
Having said that, one big aspect of the film which is very interesting, and I suppose is something that we didn't really see coming when we watched Blackfish. China in the year 2000 at the turn of the century had no middle class, right? There was no middle class in China. Now, through the technological advancements of China and the economical advancements of China, there's predicted to be 800 million middle class in China by 2025. Okay?
Okay.
So because of that, the Chinese government and Chinese companies are trying to create more of a landscape in China for middle class people to be able to go out and spend their money.
Right, okay.
So in China, SeaWorld type, not SeaWorld, but those type of sea parks are popping up all over the place. And Russia has started capturing orcas and selling them to the Chinese parks for millions of dollars.
I'm not that
so basically,
to be honest, as someone who's been to Russia and saw a live bear in not great condition, I'm not that surprised that that's
so it almost seems like it wasn't. I don't think it was legal in Russia, but they made it legal so that because no one else in the world was doing it, so they made it legal so that they could actually do it and make the money from it. But it seems as if the problem that the American sort of sea parks and all was starting up in like the 60s and 70s with orcas is only just starting in China now. So it's something to keep an eye on, and I'm sure that means we're going to get a whole lot more documentaries about orcas and about, I don't know what it is about an orca, but it's an animal that really garners a lot of empathy from humans when you actually get explained. Like, people believe when you tell them like the science of an orca's brain and how they are so intelligent and all the different displays they do in the wild and all the different behaviors they can do. For some reason, that really resonated with people through Blackfish, and I think that I think we will see a day where there is worldwide banning of orcas in captivity. I think we will see that day.
Yeah.
But I don't know when that will be now that China's sort of starting this up again. But I think that there are some animals in the world which it's harder to get empathy for.
Yeah.
For some reason.
I mean, it's the cute
ones.
That is the unfortunately the long and short of it.
And orcas are black. They're black and white, and they're very striking looking, and therefore
they've got a nice smile.
They got a nice smile.
Yeah.
They've got pronounceable names, and therefore people get on board with it. Which I'm, as an orca fan, I love it.
Exactly. You pick the right team with Team Orca because they're always going to get support. But it's interesting actually. You talk about documentaries, more documentaries coming out, because a lot of the activists who were in the Long Gone Wild were also in the 2021 documentary Seaspiracy, which I don't know if you've actually watched that yet.
Not yet.
To be honest, I didn't like it very much. I thought it was, not that I disagreed with anything it was saying, but for a documentary like that to kind of grab me, it needs to be like Blackfish, where although Blackfish is wearing its kind of narrative focus very, very heavily on its sleeve, like it's like, this is the story we're telling.
Yeah.
And I believed everything it did, but there was obviously, they wanted to tell the story that they were telling in the way they presented it. And Seaspiracy is more just like industrial levels of fishing are really badly damaging all the fish in the ocean, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's obvious. Like, what else? Like, there's no narrative to that, and it's kind of like the sort of charming naivete of the presenter of that documentary is would be fine for like a 25-minute Vice documentary, but when it's like an hour and a half film, it's a bit like, okay, dude, you really need to like maybe do a bit more research before you try and make a film about this.
Well, okay, my response to that, I haven't seen Seaspiracy, but my response to that, Conrad, is sometimes documentaries need to be made to spread a message. And
that is true, yeah.
When you're plugged in, like me and you are, cool young cats, right? Cats and kittens. But when we're plugged in like we are, we sort of already know the issues where some people wouldn't be. For example, there was a film come out called The Social Dilemma. I saw half an hour of it. Basically, my brother said to me that I should watch this documentary because Facebook ads are like recording all of our information and like targeted ads and targeted political ads and how it's affecting elections around the world. And it made me realize, I was like, yeah, I know that. And not only that, I've kind of been saying this to you for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So sometimes it does take a very obvious point-by-point documentary for people to even think about a problem.
Yeah, that is true. I'm glad Seaspiracy exists, because I'd rather it exist and have a very obvious message than not exist and no one know about it. You should watch that, and maybe we'll talk about that. Talk about it when you do, because I'll be interested to see what you think of it.
Well, I will say that I haven't seen Seaspiracy, and I probably will believe everything that they say, and I may or may not, cut down how much fish I eat because of it. I am that type of person.
Yeah.
Having said that, I do recognize before I even go into it that there are examples of some documentaries. Now, I'm not saying this is one, and it probably isn't, but there are some documentaries that base the person who wants to make the documentary has the idea to make the documentary, and then it takes them 5 years to make the documentary. So by the time they make the documentary and put it out, the science is already out of date.
Yeah, they've been beaten to the punch by the advancing science or whatever.
So I'm not going to say, like, I'd imagine, like, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I know before I watch it that the oceans are fucked and we need to do something about it. But I do go into sort of telling me that the world's going to end documentaries with a bit of that grain of salt. Because I think there was one that came out, and actually I was really disappointed. I think Michael Moore actually produced it, and I generally like. He's he's really over the top, like, but I enjoy his documentaries to a certain extent. But there was one that he produced. He didn't make it himself, but it was talking about how renewable energy isn't the future.
Okay.
And put this across, and talking about how you would never be able to sustain life on Earth with solar power, wind power, tidal power, all this. And as soon as the documentary came out, it was just panned because all of the papers that they were basing the narrative of the documentary from were from 2006 and have all been widely discredited.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say for Seaspiracy is like the it doesn't get that much into the science, which is probably in its favour, because that probably won't happen with it. And the most interesting things about it is when they catch people who work for like charities that are dedicated to cleaning up the oceans, openly lying on camera about the thing that causes the oceans to be fucked because they have ties to big fishing companies. That stuff is interesting, and that was one of the reasons. I won't spoil too much about it, but that was one of the reasons why I was disappointed in it, because that stuff's a little bit. There's not that much of it, obviously, because it's quite difficult to get interviews with people once word gets round that you're asking hardball questions. But it's worth checking out, and it sounds like, you know, if the number of given the number of activists who are on Long Gone Wild are also in Seaspiracy, sounds like Long Gone Wild is probably quite similar to it, actually.
Yeah, no, I did enjoy it. I will say, if you want a little bit of live on the ground documentary sort of news reporting here, let me say you something, right? I've uncovered a conspiracy.
Oh god! Here we go. Welcome to the conspiracy corner.
Yeah, I have discovered a conspiracy within the. And if any documentarians is watching and you want to make this documentary, off you go. There is a conspiracy within the UK government.
Fuck.
And I think we all saw it coming. But do you remember a few years ago, the Tories? If anyone doesn't know, the Tories are the right-wing party in the UK. They actually sold and like privatized the Royal Mail. So the post office in the UK has become privatized. Mm. Now, a wing of the post office, I don't know if you're aware of this, is broadband internet.
Oh, okay? I didn't know that.
So you can actually get your broadband from the post office. So my internet is from the post office. Now, here is where my little sleuthing comes in. I didn't actually have to do any sleuthing because the letter came through the door. The post office broadband department has been acquired, or I should say, given to Shell.
Okay, interesting.
So, who's one of the biggest donation to right-wing politicians? Shell. I'm not even just centrist too. And not 3-4 years after people warned that privatizing the post office was a bad idea, not 3-4 years after, the oil company is getting part of that post office company.
Lobbying.
I don't know. There's something here. There's something here, Conrad.
Who would have thought?
I'm going to make some phone calls.
A mom and pop organisation like Shell, just a wholesome mom and pop organisation, could possibly be involved in something like that, and yet here we are. I'm shocked. I'm shocked and appalled.
My broadband bill says Shell on it now.
That's shocking. Well,
I'm going to be changing soon. I don't want to be paying Shell.
Bring it all down. That's my philosophy. Yeah. Bring the system down. It's broken. It's fundamentally broken. I'll tell you what's not broken, though. That is us answering the most important question that we could possibly answer on a movie podcast, and that's not which government is most corrupt, but this week, what is your favourite movie?
For the first time ever, do you think we could say it at the same time?
Yes, I think we probably can this week. So
right, I'm not gonna meme this. I am tempted to say Billy Madison. Right, ready? Favorite movie? 3, 2, 1.
Sound of Metal.
Sound of Metal.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was really good. Although Mortal Kombat is also really good. So like, go watch that if you want to see someone be cut in half. Oh, I mean, that might happen in Sound of Metal as well. We don't deal with spoilers here. I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah.
Tune in next week.
You just told a spoiler to Mortal Kombat to say we don't tell spoilers to Sound of Metal.
That's true.
Okay.
We play fast and loose with spoilers here, frankly. Tune in. We're not going to worry about that, right? How dare you hold me accountable to the standards I supposedly espouse on this show? Tune in to next week's show where we will rigidly adhere to the standards we've set. We're doing another movie diary, I think. Not I think.
No,
we are.
Oh, no, we're not.
Are we not doing one next week? Okay, excellent.
No. Next week is a themed episode. Should we reveal what it is? Yes, we will.
Yeah, let's reveal what it is then.
We are going to be doing movies so bad they're good.
Mortal Kombat could be in there again. Look for the double header. Dun, 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 dun. I shouldn't do that because I'm going to go out of focus. I was kind of pumping my hands towards the camera for the audio listeners. That'll be good fun. So check that out next week then. I wasn't sure if we were going to do the themed episode, but now I know. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. You can find a link to their stuff down in the bits below. And thank you to you for joining us. Please, please, once again, just consider subscribing. We're the best movie podcast ever on podcasting apps and The Culture Cave on YouTube. Get involved in the comments. Let us know what you've watched or what you thought of what we watched. Give the video a like, and we will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.